Now for more on Senate Republicans' counteroffer to President Biden on infrastructure, joining us from West Virginia, the lead Republican negotiator, Senator Shelley Moore Capito. Senator, great to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Shannon. Good to be on. Thanks.
So let me ask you this. Where do we stand with negotiations this morning? I know you've been talking with the president. There's been some public speculation about who's actually calling the shots. Even Senator Mark Warner, Democrat, saying, I've had my calls returned quickly. I'm talking with the legislative team, but even I'm not really sure who's making the decisions. What's your impression and where do things stand this morning?
Well, I think the president's making the decisions. And when we went to the Oval Office, 6 of us, to talk about a bipartisan infrastructure package, the president basically tasked us to come back with something close to $1 trillion in the areas in the scope that we as Republicans feel constitutes infrastructure. Also, we could spread it over an 8-year period of time, and that's exactly what we've done. And we've got a great basis for this because we just passed a surface transportation bill unanimously out of my committee with Senator Carper as the chairman. And so I think we're building those blocks towards a really good, solid infrastructure package that has bipartisan support. So we're responding to what the president has said. He told me on the phone just day before yesterday, let's get this done. And I think that means that his heart is in this. We have had some back and forth with the staff who've sort of pulled back a little bit, but I think we're smoothing out those edges.
I want to play something that your Democratic colleague, Senator Elizabeth Warren, had to say in response to the GOP's $928 billion counteroffer. Here's her take.
I don't really think this is a serious counteroffer. We were in a crisis before the pandemic hit. It only got worse during the pandemic. This is our chance to expand our idea of what infrastructure means.
A couple of sticking points there, and one of them is the most basic, is about the understanding of what infrastructure is. Secretary Pete Buttigieg says it should be all-encompassing because if people can't work, they can't travel the roads, they can't use infrastructure. How do you guys define this? Can you get to some middle ground on that?
Well, we disagree on the definition of infrastructure, and we've been working with the president to bring it back to the physical core idea of infrastructure that we've worked so well on in the past, whether that's roads and bridges, waterways, ports, lead pipes, transit, airports, and also the new infrastructure, which, you know, is we must have everywhere, a broadband. Those are great categories, I think, that we can work together on. You know, I think it's so easy to say, let's throw everything in. I think that's what the president did initially. Human infrastructure, social infrastructure, great things to talk about, things that we need to address, daycare, senior care, all of those items. But that's not what we consider physical infrastructure on modernizing our transportation system to meet the next century challenges. And that's where I think we need to concentrate our efforts at this point.
Washington Post did a fact check on this about Republicans' claims that only 5 to 7% of the Biden plan is, quote, real infrastructure. He gave 3 out of 4 possible Pinocchios on that, saying this: to say that Biden's plan would devote only 5 to 7% of its $2.3 trillion cost, and it's moved since then, toward real infrastructure is highly misleading, the kind of talking point that tries to erase recent history and parts of the English language as a battle begins to heat up in Congress. What's accurate about where you are now in getting to those core terms?
Well, the president has $400 billion for the caring economy, the ones we were talking about, elder care, daycare, and those things. As I said, great things to talk about, but not part of a core physical infrastructure package. He also had a large section in there on research and development and manufacturing, something that's not considered initially as infrastructure. But we're working that bill right now on the Senate floor, the Endless Frontier Act. And so we're going to have bipartisan agreement there. He has a part of his plan that is incentives for buying electric vehicles. You know, that building out the infrastructure for electric vehicles, charging stations, we have that in our plan. But vouchers to purchase the automobiles and other things, that I think is something we need to discuss in a different time. And these are hundreds of billions of dollars in his plan. We just think we would be better off if we just looked at a core, solid definition that is traditionally thought of as infrastructure and move that to that next modernization to where we are the best and most technological superior infrastructure in the world.
So working on the definition of infrastructure as the deadline is now blown and continues to loom on this, but also about how to pay for it. Democrats say it makes sense to roll back cuts for corporate taxes. I tried to press the secretary on whether this is also going to mean rolling back taxes on individuals. But to the corporate point, he said there are billions of dollars in corporate profits that are going untaxed. Here's what Senator Dick Durbin had to say about the plan.
They don't want to touch the wealthiest and the big corporations who received a generous tax break under the Trump tax plan, but they haven't come up with an alternative. So I hope they'll join us in a responsible effort.
So are tax increases a red line for the GOP, whether we're talking about corporate or individual?
The tax cuts of 2017 led to the most booming economy that we had pre-pandemic. Here in West Virginia, wages up, more diversity in the workforce, more people working. It was working in terms of spreading out the economic growth all through all sectors of our economy. So I'm not going to vote to overturn those, but I can tell you we do have a plan. We have put over the course of the last year and a half trillions of dollars into COVID relief, and much of that is unspent. We say reprogram that. The administration has already reprogrammed about $2.5 billion into health and human services to help with migrant children. So we know they're not opposed to reprogramming COVID dollars and rescue dollars. Let's take a lot of those dollars, for instance, the unemployment that a lot of states are no longer extending in the $300. Let's take those dollars and devote those to something that's core infrastructure. That is part of our plan as well. We also have user fees in there. There's no reason that folks who have electric cars or hybrids who use the roads, there's no reason that they shouldn't, because they don't buy gasoline, don't pay into the gas tax, which is the traditional resource to pay for roads. There's no reason why they shouldn't participate. So we have laid out the ways to pay for this, and I think it doesn't involve raising our taxes. We all know when you raise taxes one place, it's felt everywhere. And with the stagnation of our economy, we saw slow job growth this last month. Let's make sure that we get everything reopened and the economy fully going full steam.
So the vast majority of your proposal does include hundreds of billions of dollars, you all say, in unspent COVID funds. Here's what the White House says about that, though. When Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about it, she said, here's the reason why that would be difficult to be a key funding mechanism. 95% of it is already allocated somewhere else. So Democrats say that means you're really only bringing about $250 billion in new spending to the table. It's trillions apart from where the White House started. So does it represent real compromise?
I think we can get to real compromise, absolutely, because we're both still in the game. I think the president told me himself, let's get this done. We realize this is not easy. I think we bring every idea that's on the table into the negotiations to see how we can achieve this and get it across the threshold. But I think it's interesting that the president's spokesperson said everything has been allocated. It hasn't gone out the door. We have hundreds of billions of dollars that could be reprogrammed towards something as core as infrastructure. And I think that's what we should be looking at, rather than force feeding it into certain categories where really it's not part of COVID, it's not part of a rescue package. It's dollars that were way over allocated that still have yet to be spent.
At the heart of the matter, Democrats may not need your votes for this. There is a push from the progressive left of the party to do another reconciliation package. And just to not get too wonky about it, what it means essentially is they wouldn't need a single Republican vote to get this across the finish line. That's what they did with the last almost $2 trillion COVID relief bill. What's your assessment of where a cutoff will be, where there will be no more negotiations and Democrats potentially go that route without you?
The Democrats and the president can go that route right now. And there's a reason that they aren't. And I think it's because they're seeing that through our committee work with our surface transportation bill, with our water and wastewater bill that we passed several months ago, $35 billion, that we're working this through the system. Endless frontier on the cusp being passed in terms of our competitiveness with China. And I think there is a hunger for bipartisanship. The president stood on the Capitol steps and said he's the president of everybody, represents Republicans and Democrats. He has expressed to me and to our group numerous times his desire to work with us and to negotiate a package. And I think that's what you see in facts that we're inching towards one another. I understand there's a deadline here. I understand at some point if we don't get there, but it won't be for trying. It won't because we didn't try. And it's worth it. It's worth it to show this country we can work together, we can reach compromise for the good of everybody.
And I think the American people are cheering for you all. So, Senator, thank you for joining us. We'll follow the negotiations.
Thanks, Shannon.